My name is John Harris. I'm a writer and columnist for The Guardian, and I'm here because I've just delivered a lecture which was called Independence and the English Question, Prospects for the Left, looking at what, in my opinion, inevitably will happen in England one way or the other after the vote here in September.
Articulating in terms of a Union Jack culture. But there's another culture there which is...
I don't think a lot of the energy behind Scottish independence and the case for it comes from people who have a heightened idea a hugely heightened idea of sort of traditional Scottish nationhood. One of the reasons that it's happened is because the political system within the UK is so dysfunctionally centralised. You know, once Thatcher hit him with the poll tax up here, it was sort of, well, we didn't vote for this. What's this? You know, and even despite devolution, the reason that something like the bedroom tax is so toxic here is because it represents this distant power centre in Westminster imposing itself on somewhere. And that's true equally of the northwest of England, the northeast of England, where I live, the southwest of England. Now I don't think that weakens the case for Scottish independence at all. I think that's you know, you here, a body of people, you've got the chance to go, right? And restore democratic legitimacy to the way that you're governed. I personally would jump at the chance. But that doesn't mean at the same time that a probably less dramatic, less thoroughgoing version of it can't be given to the northwest, the northeast, southwest, southeast even. I mean, it's all of England needs this. Because London, you know, particularly in the context of a political class which sort of reproduces itself now, feels like a very distant, cloistered, isolated thing that lords it around. I don't want that. I want to know that the people making the most of the decisions that affect my life are a little closer. Thinking about England and its institutional arrangements and what England is as a political entity will clearly come on the agenda if Scotland votes to go independent. But if Scotland doesn't vote to go independent, all the main political parties, the main English political parties, are now committed to an extension of devolution. We're not quite sure of the details yet, but they're all adamant this is going to happen. Once that happens, there are ideas sort of latent within the political culture of England, which are usually summed up in the West Lothian question, this idea of how devolution works essentially, or how politics in Westminster works in the context of devolution. The Tories have that phrase, English votes for English laws, that idea that once devolution has happened, there are certain things, very important things, that only English MPs should have a say on. All of this is in the culture, let alone a huge sort of revival of interest in England and Englishness, culturally speaking. So all of this is waiting to go. Now, mainstream politicians so far have sort of got their heads in the sand, really. They're not looking at it. Even journalists and commentators aren't really looking at it, but it is going to come on the agenda. Right? And the danger is that the right of politics is better prepared for this than the left in England. So although, you know, people like me feel like we're a relatively isolated presence at the moment, what we're effectively doing is saying to people on our side of politics, broadly speaking, this is coming. What are you going to do about it? I think most people were quite interested in what I had to say because the response of England and English people to what happens in September here has been barely discussed. So as strange as it sounds, this is relatively virgin territory. I think there are parts of politics in England now that people on the left, and I think most people in that talk, probably all of them, were broadly speaking sort of left-wing people. I think there are parts of this discussion they find very difficult. Because we've got a lot to work out in England about nationhood. I mean, same as you have in Scotland to some extent, but at the moment the definition of Englishness that you hear from a lot of people is to do with feeling quite uncomfortable about immigration and not liking cultural diversity and all of that. And they're difficult things for left-wing people to think about. You know, there was one gentleman asked me, he said, oh, why doesn't everyone who votes UKIP vote Green? Well, the answer is they have lots of worries about the pace of change and living in places that they think have been rendered unrecognisable and the fact that no one asked them for their permission before this happened. Now, if you're a person on the left like I am, who likes the idea of multiculturalism and diversity, that's a very difficult conversation to have. But we're going to have it, and I think Scotland and what happens here will be part of the trigger for that. It's not going to be easy at all, but it's unavoidable. Someone said to me, are you optimistic or pessimistic? I said, that's not really the issue, you know. It's a bit like Christmas. I don't really like Christmas, but it happens every year. There's nothing I can do about it, so I might as well make the best of it.